Didn't they start at Carolina at 5? First game? We should probably keep an eye on that score. I think Liberty and
Hofstra. They get Carolina to play till 7:30.
No, but I mean we should mention the game.
Of course. Coastal's still on a rain delay. They're blocking it on Snap Broadcast.
Try USA. Try NCAA.
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Played our butts off tonight. You don't always win, but I was real proud of how hard they played. I was real hard of guys fighting through a lot. Noah fighting through cramps, and LT was very sick today and throwing up in the dugout, but still continued to run out to shortstop. We had a lot of guys tonight that were banged up, and TJ back for the first time in 2 weeks. First pitch out there, he steals second base. So the team showed a lot of heart tonight.
We really spend a lot of time with our guys on our routine day in and day out on the road, the way that we practice on Thursday, the times that we eat, what we do in the morning on game day in game one. We kind of do the same routine all the time. We started it during the Louisville series is when we started really trying to change our routine on the road so that our guys are moving around and ready and not laying around in the hotel all day, and it seems to be working. So I feel like our guys are confident on the road.
And a pleasant good afternoon and evening to you and yours, and welcome to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, on this Friday, the 18th day of May, 2018, along with Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic here with you. The Professor Tom Hayes has foregone the final show of the week and starts the weekend early, but we thank you for joining us, and we hope to keep you entertained. 800-956-7266. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. A lot going on today in the baseball world. A couple of games getting underway early on this Friday, including the Clemson Tigers, who have already clinched their series with Pittsburgh with a 4-1 win today after winning 16-6 the night before. That win gets them the ACC Atlantic title and no worse than second in the ACC tournament. seedings, the way that they will go about here with the pool play in Durham. The only way they can finish first is if they finish in front of North Carolina, who has already played today as well and won. They are tied at 21-8 inside the conference record. They would need to be 22-8 with North Carolina being 21-9 because North Carolina holds the tiebreak with them, even though the two did not play each other. It involves the team with is highest ranked that they played as a common opponent. That opponent is NC State. And Clemson did not fare well against the Wolfpack. If you remember, in the opening, one of the opening series of the ACC season, they lost that series, got swept, and UNC swept NC State. But it seems that Clemson is clicking on all cylinders, peaking at the right time. Seth Beer hits his ACC leading 18th home run of the season. And really, when you look at them right now, there's hardly a flaw. Even last night when we saw Spencer Strider laboring in the opening inning, he was able to get out of it, bounce back, and help get Clemson a victory.
Yeah, playing good baseball right now. 4 runs on only 5 hits today. They only gave up 6 hits, but the Tigers got the long ball from Beer, as you mentioned. Last night, they got 2 homers from Davidson, became the first Tiger in history to hit homers from both sides of the plate.
Impressive.
So they're rolling right now. They're playing some good baseball. Pittsburgh's not a good team, but they are a team that's qualified for the first time for the ACC tournament, so they are better than they have been. Brooks Crawford was very good today for Clemson, again, only giving up in his time on the mound 5 1/3 innings. He scattered 5 hits, allowed just 1 earned run, struck out 6. I mean, the Tigers' pitching has been pretty solid all season. Their team ERA has been in the mid 3s all season long. So for college baseball, that's excellent. The defense has been improved and good enough to be successful. And now they're starting to hit the ball, even though today they only had the 5 hits. For the most part, they've started to hit the ball better. They've got a couple of guys with some streaks going on. Wilkie's had a nice long hitting streak. And I believe, is it Williams who's also working? Yeah, I think Williams is also working on another streak. But I tell you, Beer has got his average up now to 306 not too long ago. And we'll talk to Monty Lee at 720. Not too long ago, he was hitting in the 260, 270 range. But you mentioned the home run. He's now got 18 homers, got the RBIs up. I think he's starting to sense, this is his last – these are his last few games with Clemson here coming up with the end of the regular season, then the tournament games. And he's never been to the College World Series. And, a guy like that, highly acclaimed, that would be something, even though he moves on to the pro ranks after this year, in all likelihood, that would be something missing from his resume that he'll look back on and go, would like to have gotten Omaha at least once.
One of the things he talked about when I was last up there at the Florida State series, that was the last ACC home series for them, and us being there on the Monday night, we got a chance to talk to him, and he has really done a lot better job of just staying calm at the plate. I think so much from him was centered around the fact that he doesn't get to see a lot of good pitches, not only because of the fact that he is a feared hitter, but the guys around him in the lineup are also pretty good too. So they don't want to necessarily waste one and put him on base and things of that nature. So a lot of the pitches that he sees, he might have been jumping on earlier in the season. The one thing that Monty Lee said, he was not concerned about his batting average, but more his on-base percentage. That has stayed steady, and now the average has come and followed. Coastal Carolina was supposed to play 2 this afternoon at Appalachian State, but rain has at least kept them and halted them right now in the middle of the 6th. It is a 7-4 game in favor of the Chanticleers, but they have been rained out since 4:22 this afternoon. South Carolina last night, a 6-3 loss to Texas A&M. Again, we saw struggles early from Logan Chapman, but is able to actually work things out. Pitch 5 2/3. South Carolina was able to tie the game on a pair of home runs by Madison Stokes and Carlos Cortez. And something about Stokes, he had some sort of problem with his jaw on the trip on the way there.
Yeah, according to John Whittle from the Big Spur, who is out with the team at Texas A&M, as he was getting on the plane, we're talking about Stokes, he was drinking a bottle of water. And, I mean, he was like, according to John, just about to step on the plane, and some guys behind him cracked a joke, and he started to laugh like really hard, and his jaw locked.
Oh,
and he had to fly to A&M unable to close his jaw. Yeah, he had lockjaw. And once he got to Texas, the doctor had to work on him and reset his jaw and got him back okay. But according to Madison, who spoke with John after the game, he said that was as much pain as he's ever been in. This is a guy that's been dealing with some injuries. So that's got to go down as the weirdest injury of the year in a year full of injuries for Gamecock baseball.
Better say that's.
But he played.
Yeah, he played. He homered.
Yeah.
And he homered as well as Carlos Cortez. They had it tied in the 5th, but unfortunately the Gamecock bullpen could not keep them in striking distance. 6-3 the final.
Well, I was listening to that game as I was driving to Atlanta last night, and they had some freaky things happen against them. They had back-to-back plays where who was the reliever? Who came in?
Demurius.
No, who came in? Who was the starter last night? Was Chapman. I think Chapman was still in the game. And twice he had comebackers that he deflected, and the infielder couldn't make a play, and it led to the inning that put. I think the Gamecocks had tied it up, and A&M responded by going ahead in an inning where perhaps if things bounce the Gamecocks' way, they get out of it without giving up any runs.
Yeah, I watched the tail end of that game too as well, and it just seemed like there were some infield defensive plays that were mishandled or again, like you said, part of poor luck. And Mark Kingston said last night that he was still happy with the effort. We'll hear from him a little bit later on in the program. Something that is a very, very big concern for South Carolina's men's basketball recruiting class. Jawan Gary has set his Final 5, both the locals involved, Corn.
Yeah, which would be expected. I mean, they're on him very hard. He's got South Carolina, Clemson in there, NC State. Virginia Tech is another one that's in there on him. So he's moving on down the road with his process and getting it down to the short number, which is good for him because, I mean, it's always good when you've got a ton of offers, Alabama being the other one in his 5. So it's USC, Clemson, NC State, Alabama, and Virginia Tech. Now you can think about setting up your official visits and focus on those particular schools and not be inundated by a lot of different coaches calling you and all that. So and I checked on Josiah James today down at Porter Gaud, and we'll talk more about him in recruiting on Monday night. I'll do a story on him over the weekend. But South Carolina and Clemson still very much involved with him. But he's got a long list of schools. He has not narrowed his list just yet. That will come at a later point. I want to go back to baseball, though, as we hit the break here. And so with South Carolina losing last night, the Gamecocks are 15-13 in SEC play. They still stand in 5th. There's an outside chance still to grab 4th, but they're going to have to
win both and get help.
Win both games, get to 17 wins. That's the magic number for them because 16, that's what Georgia has, but they lose the tiebreaker to Georgia. So they got to win 2 more games and get some help to get to number 4.
TJ Hopkins also pinch ran last night, not in the lineup, though, and not in the lineup tonight as well for South Carolina. More in a moment.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. So, I'm compelled to say something. I don't know how you feel, but remember we were talking about the NFL Combine and how so much is built on the NFL Combine and not on the actual results that we see on the field. Are you afraid that we're getting to that point now with the NBA, with all this NBA? There's more NBA Combine coverage than I've ever seen in my life. And I just feel like what are they actually going to find out that they don't already know about these kids?
Well, I mean, this fills time for the networks.
Yeah, I know.
You know, the NFL networks, they devote a lot of time to their combine. It fills times. And, of course, ESPN is going to use anything it can to fill time in the afternoon.
Right.
Thank goodness to bump some of those lousy shows that ESPN offers us. But, I mean, I agree with you. Of course, I'm not a scout, and I don't know their job from the inside out. I personally would put more relevance on how a guy plays in games with you know, thousands of people watching versus how he does running cones or how he does playing in basically what are AAU games they're playing at the Combine in Chicago. But, you know, there's a reason the general managers and the scouts go to these things, because they're looking for something to give them a reason to draft a guy or not draft a guy. And they can see something in a guy's form or his conditioning or his attitude or something that just doesn't click with them, that maybe, you know, overtakes, maybe trumps what they see on film from his actual playing time.
Well, there's two guys that are in the Combine right now who basically have nil when it comes to experience at the collegiate level. Michael Porter Jr., the Missouri guy who basically played his first 2 minutes of the season and then sat out basically until the end of the year because of an injury, and Brian Bowen, the South Carolina product right now, who obviously is in a little bit of a limbo because of the NCAA eligibility stuff, but I don't know what more they're going to find out on these guys. Now, Porter does not have the option to come back. He signed an agent. He's already committed. Bowen, at this point, you know, I look at him, Corn, and I see a wiry guy who needs weight room, who really doesn't have a position, I think, right now at the next level. I mean, I understand the ability and the want to get experience, things of that nature. In my mind, number one, I don't see why he's there other than to just, again, have some intel, unless he wants to try and bolt because he's worried he's not going to play. But at the same time, I don't know if there's a spot for him on an NBA roster right now. Or there was one guy who said today, I don't even see how he could play in the G League right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, they don't invite you to the combine unless there's some level of interest in you.
Right.
You know, you're not going to take up a spot from somebody else who might have been there. So there's obviously somebody there who thinks he's worthy of a look. He was a top 100 prospect coming out of high school, and certainly higher than that. And he is a guy who, by all accounts, has a ton of talent, has a really nice frame on him. I know, like you said, needs to put on some weight, but he's long and lean. And in today's NBA, what do you see a lot of? Those long bodies, long arms, guys that can hit the outside shot and then defend because they got the long arms and they run the floor well. So, look, all it takes is one guy to like you, and that can get you into the draft. It also, in his mind, you know, depending on who he's listening to, the sooner you get into the league and sign that first contract, and if you can do well enough, the sooner you get to sign for the big money. And that's what they look at. The guys are telling them, the agents are telling them, you know, get in there, get that first contract signed, get that rookie money, get that slotted money behind you. If you do well, if you're good, then you're going to have a chance to sign a big contract sooner. While you're still young, then you'll have a chance for another big contract down the road. This is all projected, of course,
right,
on you being a great player.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you flame out, then you flame out and you don't make any money. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I still think that he will not be at South Carolina. I don't base it on anything other than my hunch and just seeing how all this is being played out.
And how shady the NCAA is.
Because look, that too. I mean, look, where would he be benefiting more from right now? Is he benefiting more from going up there and playing pickup games, or would he be benefiting more from being here in Columbia with his future teammates, working out in the weight room, going through the off-season conditioning program that I'm sure the Gamecock basketball team is going through right now?
I think he would benefit more by the latter.
Being in Columbia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to confuse you. I think he'd benefit more being here versus Chicago.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So my point is, we know that. He probably knows that, but he also probably is thinking, I want to go to the NBA.
Well, I think he's also probably thinking, I think the NCAA can screw me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's it.
That's entirely possible.
The ACC baseball scores from today. We mentioned Clemson already, a winner over Pittsburgh 4-1. Louisville beat Notre Dame 5-0. North Carolina over Virginia Tech 11-2. That's the one that's of chiefest concern for Clemson. They need North Carolina to lose tomorrow in order to get a top seed, and they also have to take care of business tomorrow.
Probably ain't going to happen.
Game's still underway. Georgia Tech 17-5 leading on Duke. Boston College leads Miami 2-1, and no score between NC State and Florida State. Also just getting underway at Wake Forest between Virginia.
What score do you have for Georgia Tech and Duke?
17-5.
17?
In favor of Georgia Tech.
Because I'm looking at what inning you've got.
Middle of the sixth.
Do they have a 12-run inning?
I
have them. Let me see this thing update.
This is from the ACC website.
Yeah, you're right. They must have had
a 12-run fifth inning.
Yeah,
in the middle of the fifth inning.
So this will be, and Georgia Tech beat them last night. So all of a sudden, Duke as a home seed. All right. All of a sudden, that starts to take on a whole new flavor. And here's, are we thinking? Is Coastal that close to getting to the top 16 where if somebody falters, Coastal can slide in there and be that 16th seed or a seed there to get that 16th spot for a home regional?
The problem, as we've said all year, is it's just their region. It's not something that they can control. They've already done all the work that they can do. They beat North Carolina head-to-head. They were supposed to play them twice, but they only got the one game in. They beat them at Springs Brooks Stadium. At this point, it's something where you have to just kind of win what's in front of you. And if they run the table, they win the rest of their games, they go and win the tournament at the end at the Sun Belt, maybe they get in. All
right, now this is good from a South Carolina standpoint. If this holds, Arkansas is leading Georgia 6-5 in the fifth.
That's good.
Any Georgia loss would be good for South Carolina if the Gamecocks can win a couple of games at Texas A&M. So the Gamecocks tonight. It was Chapman last night, and he really didn't pitch all that poorly.
No.
And he was still had a good fastball in the latter portions of the time that he was on the mound.
He has been great at times. Like, he looked great against North Carolina and Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
He was doomed by one bad inning there at the end. And I think the only thing that's wrong with him is that he just can't get a lot of length out of himself, and he doesn't trust his stuff when he starts to tire. But he's got great stuff when he can actually have his command.
So they go with Adam Hill tonight, top of the rotation, truly, and
looks really good on Saturday.
And if he can do his stuff, maybe the Gamecocks can muster up some offense and pull out a win tonight. I mean, again, it was a game last night where they were very much in it, and things just got away from them in the field in the last couple of innings. So they'll be facing tonight from Texas A&M a sophomore left-hander, John Duxakis, 6-4, 3.15 ERA, 64 strikeouts in 74 innings. So doesn't have quite the strikeout to inning ratio that his teammates last night, Kilkenny, and then tomorrow. No, they haven't named their pitcher for tomorrow, so he doesn't have quite the strikeout to innings ratio that Kilkenny had going in his game last night. So we'll see if South Carolina can muster some offense against this Texas A&M. And look, Texas A&M is not a great team. I know their RPI is higher than South Carolina's.
Tough place to play. Tough place to play. And here's the other thing, too. Again, South Carolina, they have the heat down here, which is, something that obviously they know how to handle. When you go down and play there in Houston, it is much different.
94 degrees, I think, yesterday.
In the dark.
Yeah.
It started at 7:30, and it's dark, and it just, trust me when I say this, the heat there is something fierce.
Carlos Cortez has quietly put together 15 home runs now.
Dude,
a guy that struggled out of the gate and it wasn't hitting his weight.
I was going to say couldn't hit his weight.
Yeah. But now he's got 15 home runs and starting to get it going. They just need to and look, Stokes had a couple of hits last night despite the lockjaw situation. So they need more offense tonight for sure.
You had a very interesting football-related anecdote you told me earlier.
Yeah.
I want to get into that next on Sports. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We are brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Visit foundersfcu.com to see how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. Foundersfcu.com. Certainly a lot to get to in recruiting, which we'll get to in about 15 minutes. Remember, if you're listening to us on one of our 28 terrestrial affiliates, which you can find at SportsTalkSC.com, you can also do so via TuneIn Radio. Just click on our affiliate that is in Columbia that never preempts us, the Point Radio in Columbia, WQXL. They will get you ready and put you in the great mood for that. Also, make sure to watch us on our Periscope at Sports Talk SC. So you were talking with someone yesterday about South Carolina and Clemson football, and they seem to think that the gap is probably further than you and I think it is.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. This guy is a Clemson fan, no question about it, but we were just talking football and stuff in general, and
Bleeds orange.
And he said, "Oh yeah," and he said, "You know what? I'll give you South Carolina and 28 points."
Really?
And I said, "Really?" I said, "You're kidding." I said, "Come on, you got to believe from where you sit that South Carolina has closed the gap." He said, "No, it'll be proven." He said, "It'll be proven up at Death Valley in November. The gap is still wide between South Carolina and Clemson." And I said, "Well, first of all, I'll be happy to take the 28 points. And secondly, South Carolina has made major strides, I think, in personnel, and the changes that Muschamp has made on the offensive side, bringing in Dan Werner and making McClendon the offensive coordinator. I still think that is still to be seen. I mean, we've only seen McClendon run the offense in one game, and for 2.5 quarters, the offense stunk against Michigan, and then it finally, got going. And for about 10 minutes there, they looked very, very good on offense. So, they've had the offseason and spring practice to piece it together the way he envisions it, and with Warner working with quarterbacks, that should be a positive. Offensive line looks very good. I think defense will still be. Defense has always been pretty good under Muschamp. I think the defense will continue to be better than most. So I don't see the Gamecocks going up to Clemson and losing by 4 touchdowns. Not this time.
800-956-7266. Corn says a friend of his of Clemson persuasion made the Gamecocks 28-point underdogs.
Yeah.
Here's the other. Well, again, the change of venue has a lot to do with it. I understand that.
Well, when they went up there 2 years ago,
it was bad.
Well, Jake Bentley just wasn't prepared for it. And again, that was a national championship football team they were playing. And also, the Gamecocks, the coaches did a terrible job. They played right into Clemson's hand, number one, by having Jake trot over to the sideline after every play to get the next play.
Slow it down.
That was the idea. That was the thinking behind it. And it totally took him off his game. He was completely ineffective.
The tempo should be different, obviously.
I would think.
They'll have Debo in the lineup, presumably, depending on whether or not he stays healthy. Again, there's no reason to believe that that's going to be the gap. Now, do I think you can reasonably expect Clemson to win that game? I think absolutely. Can you expect them to win it handily? I think it also probably is the case. But I will say this. There has to come a point when you are a South Carolina player where you are fed up with the continued dominance of Clemson. And
that in and of itself doesn't make a difference.
I know it doesn't, but at the same time, some of that rubber has to meet the road in my mind. And whether it's this year or next year when they play at Willie B, or somewhere down the line, there's going to have to be a situation where the talent gap has to be lessened, the confidence factor has to be ratcheted up, and Will Muschamp, quite frankly, has to come up with a better game plan defensively, because it looked like while at halftime you could maybe say that South Carolina could have still had a puncher's chance, you think about that opening drive in the game last year in the second half, that basically killed every single bit of the spirit, and you could look out and see that Gamecock team quit on that game.
Well, in Muschamp's 2 seasons at South Carolina, there's only been one team that has dominated his team, and that's been Clemson. The other losses they sustained have all been by a reasonable margin. They were in those ball games. Only 2 games they've been out of is Clemson. Well, Clemson's in their head right now.
Of course.
There's no question about
Living
that.
rent-free.
Much like the Gamecocks were in Clemson's head for 5 years when they were winning repeatedly under Steve Spurrier. So
the thumb.
now what you've got to do is, if you're South Carolina, of course, you got to take care of your other business and build up your confidence and your swagger during the regular season and beat some good teams. Beat a Georgia at home, beat Florida, beat Tennessee, and have a good record. Have 9 or 10 wins behind you when you go up to Death Valley and feel like you are a top 20 team and play with that kind of confidence. And then trust your coaching. Trust what you have been taught. Trust what you have worked on all season long. But, I mean, I think that is still what this person was saying to me. I think that is still pretty typical of a common Clemson fan in relation to how they feel about the rivalry with South Carolina. They feel like they are still vastly superior. And there's no question that Clemson is not backing up. The question is South Carolina doing enough on its own to cut into the gap in terms of talent? I mean, Clemson is still recruiting at an extremely high level. South Carolina is not getting 1 through 25 compared to Clemson's 1 through 25 in a typical recruiting season, still not getting that level of player top to bottom. They're getting some, but Clemson's roster is, I mean, just look who Clemson constantly is recruiting against and who they're going for. Well, South Carolina has been willing, and this is Muschamp's thinking here. I mean, he's willing to take a guy who's not as highly acclaimed, not as highly recruited, but this player meets his criteria, and he's a guy that he thinks can be developed and become a very good player in his program.
Well, I'll say the analogy differently than the last time I said it on our air, because last time I said it on our air, it sparked a bit of a fuse. Clemson's shopping at a different store for its players than South Carolina is. It just has to be. Clemson is shopping at a store where they're seeing in the aisles, they see Alabama in the same aisle. They see Ohio State in the same aisle. They see Southern California in that aisle. They see Texas A&M in that aisle. South Carolina is not shopping with those people. They're not. They just aren't. And maybe Josh Belk could change that. Maybe he can be a windfall. Maybe some of the guys in the next recruiting class could possibly be part of that windfall, some of the in-state prospects. But the other thing that needs to happen, and it's not about recruiting in South Carolina, you have to figure out a way to get somebody who's a highly touted player from a football-rich state to come play here. And that's something that is very, very difficult to do when you don't have an established program yet.
Well, they've done that in this class thus far, and that's Ryan Helinski.
Right.
I mean, they've got an Elite 11 quarterback committed to them, a guy who is very active on Twitter and with other recruits and talking to them. He's got some buddies in California that he's talking to who are looking at South Carolina, but they're also being heavily recruited nationally. And you hear me say sometimes when I mention a player that South Carolina is recruiting and I mention the schools that they're up against, and I'm like, these are the kind of players you have to get. You have to beat players who are getting those kind of offers to elevate your program from an overall talent standpoint. To me, more than your 5-star and 4-star rankings, I judge a prospect by his committable offers. And if you have offers from Clemson and Ohio State and Oklahoma, the typical powers, that you can commit to any of those, then the guys who make the millions of dollars to judge talent believe you're good. So when you're beating East Carolina and Kennesaw State and Duke and Vanderbilt and those kind of teams for players, you're not getting that same level of talent that your neighbor is getting by and large. Now, again, that doesn't mean that a player can't come in and be developed. We see it all the time.
Development,
under-recruited and overdeveloped. We see that all the time.
Development can only take you so far. Like development, there is a ceiling there, I think, and you can only turn so many guys who are, I hate to use the star ranking, but you can only turn so many guys who were 2- and 3-star guys into 4- and 5-star guys by the time they leave your building. That's that there's a cap on that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, you're only as good as your God-given talent will take you, and then good coaching will supplement that and maybe elevate you a little bit more. So yeah, there's no doubt about that. You don't win the Kentucky Derby with a mule.
That's good.
I didn't make that up. I've heard that before.
So
you win the Kentucky Derby with a dang thoroughbred. That's how you win the Kentucky Derby.
The ACC has some very interesting thoughts about the future of basketball in its conference and also the future of basketball in whole, which we'll discuss next on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Big update in recruiting involving an in-state prospect, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, Korn has his bow and arrow out, and he wants to take a shot at the ACC. I'm going to let you go right now.
Well, very simply, they're having their meetings down at Amelia Island, Florida, and they're discussing all kinds of stuff, football and basketball. Of course, the basketball folks are up in arms over the Rice Commission and their report and the things that they want to do to try to improve basketball. And just my thought as I was reading this was, how can the ACC address anything about anybody's problems or any issues when you have North Carolina still in the league and shining championship trophies off the sweat and effort and talent of players who are ineligible, and they've done nothing about it? I just, how can that's so hypocritical? How can they make any comment or anything towards any changes in the rules or anything towards what they call improving basketball when you still have that elephant in the room known as North Carolina bogus classes, bogus grades, and bogus transcripts?
If you ask them, the elephant's not in the room, Korn. That's the problem. They just nothing to see here.
You can bury your head all you want. You can't change history. History's there. I mean, the fact that the NCAA chickened out and chose not to move forward with its investigation in this case is ridiculous too. That's a discussion for another day. We're talking about the ACC people themselves. This is just my opinion. My opinion is that North Carolina got off with what would be considered capital murder in terms of what they got away with on the academic side of their campus and their athletes. I know all about the fact that the classes were open to all the students and da-da-da-da-da, and that's why the NCAA said it was bailing on the case. You still can't dismiss the fact that you had a large number of athletes who took bogus classes, reflected on their transcripts, reflected on their GPA, reflected on their availability for eligibility, and able to play when other schools, if you did the same thing at another school, let's say at South Carolina, and you got the starting wide receiver in a class, and he's looking over a paper on a neighbor's paper, and he's caught cheating. He's given an F, and he's suspended from the class, and it drops his GPA to below eligibility level. And you played him, and it was later discovered you'd have to forfeit every game he played in.
Vacate the wins.
What is the difference when you apply common sense to it? Okay, forget all the legal mumbo jumbo. Just apply common sense to it and how the world works in terms of eligibility and penalties for playing somebody who's ineligible.
Here's my problem.
I don't get it.
Here's my problem with what some of the things that they're saying, and it has something to do with something completely different. But they're talking about this wanting to expand the NCAA tournament to 72 teams.
Let them all in. I say let them all in and give them all trophies.
Who is out there telling these people that we want more of the NCAA tournament? We want more of the first four. The first four, while a very nice idea to get an extra revenue stream, I do not want to see more games in front of an empty gym in Dayton.
Yeah. Pro's right. He's said this before, and it makes sense. I mean, the tournament, since everybody now has their own league tournament, the NCAA tournament is open to everybody because the winner of the conference tournament gets the automatic bid. So everybody's got a chance. So I don't understand. You're right. I don't understand the need to expand it to 72. What's the argument for that?
There's none. Here's the argument for it. More money. More money.
Sounds like an ESPN-driven thing.
It's not ESPN. ESPN didn't get any money from the NCAA tournament. It's all about CBS and Turner now.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, yes. But I should have said CBS.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem too. I see the people who want to, playoff expansion, college football playoff expansion. That's obviously something that, the team that's the fifth best team still has a chance to win the NCAA championship in football. What is Team 70? What claim to a championship to try and get through the NCAA tournament gauntlet that it is?
You forget about Maryland, Baltimore County.
They didn't win.
It can happen. They won a game. They won a game.
So
Appalachian beat Michigan in the Big House.
We're talking about one game. They're not going to win the tournament. So why? And it's not a very good way to determine a champion.
Have no clue about the spirit of college sports. Everybody has a chance to win. That's why it's called March Madness. All 68 teams have a chance to win the championship. That's why there are Cinderellas.
That's not true. Come on.
All right, recruiting.
Come on.
As we approach the top of the hour.
You can't even believe the words that are coming out of your mouth right now. You're speaking so much with jest.
Well, no, yeah. Of course, I'm kidding about that, but I'm not in favor for. I look. Why do they keep messing with college basketball, and why do they keep messing?
Because they know it's the only way they can make money. Because they know the regular season is full of crap. Regular season sucks. They keep trying to make it earlier and earlier and earlier, and yet you know what? We'll just expand the tournament. We'll just make more tournament games because it's the only thing anybody pays attention to anyway.
Well, you know that the college basketball season will start early.
I know.
Early November.
And guess what? We still won't care about it in November.
That's right.
Just saying.
At least not around here.
We'll be talking about South Carolina Clemson football.
There'll be some hot spots that care, but not around here.
We're not going to Mohegan Sun either.
All right, basketball recruiting. Jawan Gary of Gray Collegiate released a top 5 today. USC, Clemson, NC State, Alabama, and Virginia Tech. So those are the 5 that he will be focusing on. 6'9" DJ Burns of York Prep. Had a chance to talk with him last night. Close on his decision, but not announcing it anytime soon. He said that he has an idea about his plans, but he won't commit publicly until after the NBA Top 100 camp in Charlottesville. That's June 12 through 17. He said, quote, "I'm getting there, but I'm not making it public as of now. I'm getting close. Yes, sir." He took official visits to USC and Tennessee, has no other visits planned. He's also hearing from Clemson, Wake, Georgetown, Houston, and Pitt. He talked with USC assistant Perry Clark on Thursday, and his former coach at York Prep, Frank Hamrick, said he talked with Burns earlier in the week. He also got the feeling that Burns has a good idea about his choice, and he said that it looks like it's down to 2, USC and Tennessee, from where he sits. This is Hamrick talking. And he said, I think he knows. He says, I definitely think he's leaning a certain direction, but anything can change. Of course, he was originally in the 19 class, announced earlier this month he will enroll in the 18 class. Football. Clemson offered earlier in the year defensive end Justin Eboigbe, 6'4", 261, defensive end, Forest Park, Georgia. Since then, they've made him a primary target. Todd Bates is leading the recruiting charge. And he said that the Tigers are in his top 5 with Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, and Tennessee. He's been talking a lot with Bates and building his relationship. And he is a versatile player who can play all across the line. That's one reason the coaches like him. He plans to take his officials before deciding, and Clemson will get one.
What's that last name again?
Last name is Eboigbe. That is how he pronounces it. Eboigbe. Eboigbe.
Well, Clemson's hoping that he would be Bay before everything.
Clemson offered 2020 receiver Keandre Lambert, Norfolk, Virginia, and defensive end Logan Cash of Winder, Georgia. Cash is in the 19 class. USC offered 2020 defensive back Joel Williams of Baton Rouge. USC commitment running quarterback Ryan Holinsky offered by Oregon State. So he's got offers from the Beavers and from the Gamecocks. Alabama contacted Irmo running back Kendrell Flowers this week and plans to see him soon. An offer may be in the works. Flowers,
kiss that guy goodbye.
Flowers is committed to Wake Forest, but he also recently just picked up an offer from Tennessee.
I don't think that Wake Forest commitment has a chance. If it gets an Alabama offer.
Oh, really?
Come on.
You didn't catch the little
the
little connection there between Oregon State and South Carolina. See, if you use the shorter version of the USC nickname, you'd have something interesting there that people would toss around, but we're not going to go there because that probably will get us in trouble. So
I'm just going to say that George Bryan is next.
Yes.
And he's going to talk about
golf.